First and foremost, good morning, and I really appreciate you all being here. This is about, 5, 6, 7 times more of a crowd than I was expecting. But I like it. I like it a lot. And I am going to use the mic, although I don't often like using mics, but I just want to make sure that you can hear me in the back. So is it okay in the back? You can hear me? And it'd be better if I talk this way or like this with the mic. That's what I figure. So a little bit out of my comfort zone using mics, but as long as I can get the word out, that's what it's all about. My intent is to do these town halls basically every quarter. It's been 90 days since I came into office, and a little bit about my background and why town halls are important. I served in our military for 30 plus years. The last job I had, I ran Fort Meade. I was the installation commander. I had about 1,000 workforce, but about 55,000 that either live or worked on Fort Meade. It was really difficult to share with folks my intent and the activities that were happening on the installation, except through different media, newspaper, radio, TV, but town halls seem to be the best. And the best town halls that I've had were the ones that are very interactive. So the approach I want to take in the next hour, a little over an hour, and I definitely train to task, not to time, so we'll go as long as you want, is for me to take about a quarter of the time, a fifth of the time, and you take about 4/5 of the time and make this as interactive as we can. My approach are using 3 words: listen, learn, and lead. And they're not just bumper sticker approaches, and nothing I really am going to say with some of my approach are things that I just make up overnight. There are things that I've had from experience and from mentors that I've had. The listen, learn, lead approach actually came from one of my bosses, General McChrystal, and the intent is to listen to you, learn from you, and then lead together with you. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should be prepared to listen twice as much as we're able to talk. And that's what this is all about, is I want to have the ability to listen, not just hear the things that you have to say, learn from your experiences. Another word for experience to a lot of us is scar tissue, and a lot of us have a lot of scar tissue from our experiences. I want to hear and listen about those scar tissues, learn from them, and then come up with a strong plan to lead with you on what we're doing here in District 5, in Eldersburg and Sykesville, and then also in our county. My responsibility as I take it is to focus on our district, our community, on your needs, and then share those to the rest of the government. But it does not mean that District 5 priorities are the only priorities that we're looking at inside of Carroll County. The intent is to govern with the rest of the county, 4 other commissioners, come up with a strong plan, and then resource the things that we believe are the right priorities. I apologize, it's a little bit small. Maybe next time I'll be using view graphs with such a large crowd. But the focus is to identify what our values are. And that's something I'm going to want to hear from you and listen to you about what you believe our values are in Eldersburg, Sykesville, and Carroll County. And then how do we prioritize those values? And then how do we resource those priorities? When I use the word resource, the first thing that comes to mind is money. We are focused on our budget. We're going to be walking into the budget season real soon. But there's other resources available to us. Our time, something that we never get back, and then also the people around us. So if I'm applying my resources, my time, the people within Carroll County, and our money, I better be sure that it's attached to our priorities and that our priorities are attached to our values. If we prioritize work that is not focused on the quality of life and our values within Carroll County, then I think our priorities are out of whack. And I want to be able to listen to you again and learn what you believe our values are and ensure that we're prioritizing the work and the effort that we are doing tied to those values, and then we're able to resource the necessary dollars, time, and people to those priorities. Hopefully that makes sense. What I want to do is walk through a few topics that I believe should be are on your mind, or may be on your mind. The growth, the business and economic development growth and change that we see in Aldersburg and in Sykesville, from down 32, the Warfield complex. You going up 32 on the right side, across from Haight is the National Guard Freedom Readiness Center. You keep going up to 26, and you make a right, and on the left you see some ground being turned, and that's a Wawa's in front of what's going to be Michael's. You keep going down just a little bit on the right, and there's a lot of dirt being turned, and actually that's just dirt. That's just county dirt that's been put into that property for grading, but it is not designated right now specifically for a specific activity. So it is private company moving dirt right next to Homeland. That's what that is. On 26, if you go the opposite way, westbound towards 97, the widening of 26, the concerns we have on the light between 26 and Johnsville Ave by the Methodist Church. Those are topics that I believe should be interesting to you, and I want to hear some of your thoughts on those. Safety and security. The Sheriff's Department is a great partner in Carroll County, to Carroll County government, and a great partner to you. And we're blessed that the Carroll County Sheriff's Department is with us today, and also will be later on this evening for my second town hall. And he's going to share with you some of the statistics about what he's actually just came from today, right? The latest? Okay, year to date statistics, and I'm going to get him up here in a couple of minutes to talk about what the Sheriff's Department is actually seeing. Safety, I talked about the road intersection 26 and Johnsville Ave, intersection Bennett Road and 32. What are the plans for some of these intersections? How can we ensure the safety for those that are commuting? How can we ensure safety for the kids that are going to schools, the sidewalks that are being planned around the schools? Schools, some of the changing footprint in schools. Right now, there are no changing footprint down here in District 5 with the school system. My kids went to Piney Elementary and Sykesville Middle and Century High School. I'm very proud of what they've achieved through those schools. I'm very proud of what they achieved through those schools because of those teachers, because of the administration, because of the cafeteria workers and those that kept those schools running, because of the coaches that dedicated their time to teaching my kids in the elementary, middle, and high school. So I'm a strong advocate for public school education. I'm a product of it. My dad was a retired school teacher. Before the military, I was a special ed teacher. So I'm very much about public education. Drugs. There's no other way to say it except it's evil. It is something that we have to deal with every day. And it is a strong concern of all of us in our neighborhoods, in our community. And I want to share with you some of the activities that we're doing in dealing with the drug situation. Whether it's facilities that we're partnering with the state, it's the nonprofit programs that are supporting our community and county, and it's also the county work that we're doing in dealing with the drug situation. The opioids, the fentanyls, the over-the-counter drugs, it's a mess, and we got to deal with it. Septic, sewer, roads. Basically, what I'm sharing with you is infrastructure. Changing infrastructure. What are we doing about the roads? What are we doing about the septic situation, the sewer lines? How this all comes into play with the Freedom Plan that was approved in October. The Freedom Plan that was approved in October is a very strong milestone and a step forward in Carroll County to ensure the quality of life and, again, the growth makes sense in the southern part of Carroll County and in Carroll County as it is a part of the region. Now the tough part is how to execute that freedom plan, how to work through the zoning, rezoning of properties throughout Carroll County. Some would say that the zoning should have happened before the freedom plan was ever approved. That's fine. Where we are today is we have an approved plan for land use, which is called the Freedom Plan, which is designated growth areas, you all know. What's that? Ma'am? And then from there, what we're doing now is we just went through a series of work sessions within our government, within the county, focused on the zoning. Does it make sense how things are zoned? Should areas be rezoned? Should they be defined differently? Are the definitions appropriate for commercial and industrial and employment centers? That rezoning work sessions, a half dozen work sessions, are now going to be out for public comment. And I believe it was just put in the paper. I know we just announced there'll be a couple evening events late March for public comment on how we are now defining the zoning and how we're looking at rezoning some of the areas within Carroll County. I saw some conversations, mostly on social media, regarding parks and regarding the needs for our parks, the ball fields, the playing fields, the walking trails. And it's important that we talk about, and I can share with you what I know, where we're at with the parks and the walking trails, and again, how we're moving forward and applying those resources to get the adequate parks for our kids. There's never enough. There's never enough flat ground for parks, but what we're trying to do is optimize as much flat ground as we can and get parks in place. But I saw some of those topics. I'm going to get off the stage in a second, but before I hand it off to our officer, I just want you to take a look at this. And this is where I want you to start from in asking your questions. What if you could do something? What if we could do something? How about we do X? Why don't we fill in the blank? What's happening with? I have a concern with something. What do you think about me personally? I am going to be as transparent as I can. You want to ask me a question about my values, about how I think, how I approach things, ask. Being your commissioner, the intent is to give you the confidence in me that I am going to serve you the right way. This is not about campaigning. This is not about politics. This is about service. 30 plus years of service, I want to extend that service, and that's why I'm standing up here, and that's why I need you to share with me your thoughts to ensure that you have the best confidence in me that I can provide in moving forward. I'm focused on quality of life. When we moved here into Eldersburg, into Sykesville, 12 plus years ago, I literally came out here on a Friday from Colorado as I was PCSing, changing stations from Colorado to Fort Meade. It took me one day to find a house. I found it on Saturday. I selected on Sunday and I bought on Monday, all without my wife, and we're still married and life is good. The reason I bought that house was because of my neighbors, was because of the folks that were in that house, or because of the kids surrounding that community. They're the ones that convinced me, and literally convinced me within a day. It was that easy. That was quality of life. That's what I appreciate most about Carroll County, And that's why I want to continue to stay here in Carroll County and not just live in a house, but keep it as my home and keep it as a strong neighborhood and quality of life. This has nothing to do with politics. This has everything to do with quality of life. This has everything to do with neighbors helping neighbors, communities helping communities, and you having the confidence in me that I can convey to the rest of our government, these are the resources we need to apply because there are priorities tied to our values. So, something to think about, and then I'm going to open it up to you after we get a little bit of an update, smidgen of an update. So I brought the shortest person I can find in the Sheriff's Department to come talk to us for a second. Bring the camera up.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Major Richard Hart. I'm the commander of the Operations Division here at the Sheriff's Office. So under my command falls our Patrol Division, our School Resource Division. I have a ton of stuff. Our Special Grants, the Sheriff makes me do everything, absolutely everything. So when you see the folks riding around in the marked police cars making traffic stops, I'm responsible. There's a captain that works in my division that works for me, lieutenants and what have you. I put some of our crime analysis on the table. I didn't have enough, I'm sorry, because this is a great crowd. Normally during the day, there's not such a big crowd. You folks are we have 9 patrol areas within Carroll County. It's divided into 9 different areas. You folks are in the 8 and 9 area. So I had our crime analysts pull some statistics for year to date for what's going on in 8 and 9, crime-wise and for our drug overdoses. I will tell you, and this stands to be true, we live in the safest county in the state. Our violent crime is next to nothing, and I knock on wood, and that's a great thing. We have very little violent crime. We do have some property crime. Our retail thefts are up, and that's mainly in the Westminster area and in the 26 corridor. We have the Walmart and the Martin's Foods. They're a hot topic for shoplifting. We have some issues with theft from autos, folks going around stealing things out of cars at night. The vast majority of our theft from autos are from people that don't lock their cars. We have a few, every once in a while we'll have a window broken out when somebody sees a purse laying on the front seat or a wallet or a cell phone. Obviously that's a target. But most of the time it's our folks that go through and at nighttime and try on doorknobs, and they go in and the door handles and the car's unlocked. And they're stealing things from cars. We can't stress enough. We could cut our number of theft from autos down in half if we just locked our cars. Just some preventive measures. I'm sorry. I'm a big guy, but I speak softly. My folks always yell at me for that. Our property crime is fueled by our drug issue. And I brought some numbers here that are kind of staggering. In 2018, we had 513 overdoses in Carroll County. 513. It's crazy. 217 of those were heroin, and 71 of those were fatal. People passed away from it. And that's just in Carroll County. In your area, in the 8 and 9 area, we had 78 overdoses. We had 9 fatal overdoses. What do you say about that? I don't know what to say about that. It's the number staggering. Our property crime is fueled by this drug issue. Folks are stealing to go to Baltimore, and it's Baltimore, or York, Pennsylvania, or Frederick to buy their drugs. Baltimore's a hop, skip, and a jump away. We all know you can go down there in any corner and buy heroin. So that's our issue right now. Is our retail theft is boomed. People will go into the Walmart, walk out with a big screen TV, just walk right out, and they'll take it right to Baltimore, and they'll trade it for drugs. So we have detectives that do nothing but retail crime. That's what they work on. The sheriff is committed to be proactive. We've done a great job in stopping this crime. We've arrested a lot of folks, and we're doing what we can. We work very closely with our allied resources, the state's attorney's office, the health departments, to try to figure out a way to fix this drug problem. It's nationwide, it's just not here. So that's our biggest battle at this point. Again, I get a lot of people calling me and say, well, I got a ticket on 26 and I got a ticket on Johnsville Road, and all I do is see your deputies out there stopping people for speeding. And my response isn't popular to some people, but I tell folks, in this county, chances you getting injured or hurt, thank goodness, in a crime, very minimal. The chance of you getting hurt very seriously or killed in a car accident in this county, it's going to happen as opposed to a crime. So the sheriff has made it quite clear to me, and I make it quite clear to my folks, that we're out there aggressively enforcing our traffic laws. People have to slow down, they have to drive sensible. We see it every day. 26, there's so much traffic, and it's the nature of the beast. We have retails, stores. The daytime traffic increases immensely because of the population. So we work collectively with the municipalities and the state police to go out and try to make sure our roads are safe. Our DUI enforcement, it's very important. Make sure we get our drunk and drug drivers off the road. We have a neighborhood enforcement deputy that does nothing, but when somebody calls and says, I live on such road and there's speeders, or there's somebody going through the red lights of a school bus area, we send people out there to do nothing but enforce those laws. Our deputies that are assigned patrol areas are responsible for making sure that you guys are safe. And unfortunately, I hope none of you folks have been stopped by my deputies, but that's what we do, and we're going to continue to do that to make sure it's safe here. I also oversee our school resource program. Since last year, we have implemented through the sheriff and through the commissioners, we've started our school resource program. So every high school in the county, all 8 high schools now, has a deputy assigned permanently. That's where they stay. Unfortunately, again, we know what goes on at these schools, and it's tragic, and we want to try to prevent that. And it's a 2- or 3-fold system. The main reason to have the deputies at these schools is for security. That's priority number 1. But it's also to get into the schools to mentor these folks, and so they can see uniformed deputies, and maybe they want to, get into law enforcement. But our deputies have started very positive relationships with the high school students, and it's worked out very well so far. The Safe School Act, what the legislator passed last year, the Maryland legislature, requires to have adequate coverage in all the schools in the state of Maryland at some point. What's adequate coverage? Well, that's up for interpretation. So the sheriff is going to, hopefully when we get some more staffing, we're going to start our school resource program to trickle down into the middle schools also, to have deputies. Unfortunately, it's the day and age we live in that you have to have uniformed police officers in schools, but it's a very good program. And there was some concern that having a deputy in the high schools would be, we're out looking for folks that are doing stuff wrong, and we're going to arrest our school kids, and that's not what it's about, and it's not what it has been about. Actually, the incidents in schools have gone down since we've had the school resource program in the high schools. We have eight high schools in the county, and it's actually going down. Liberty High School, they just started this year with a school resource deputy, and it's been a very good program. Real quick, with the sheriff's office, we have 118 sworn deputies. It comprised of our patrol division. We have a warrant unit. We have our criminal investigation division. Anybody have any questions I can answer for you?
Does the state police still work with the county resident trooper program? Do you also have that?
There is no resident trooper program. There are deputies still in the barrack, and they handle the state highways. 26, 32. Great working relationship. I talk to the barrack commander every day. She's phenomenal. So it's just 1-8. It's just like the municipalities. We all work together. But yes, they handle. Their primary jurisdiction is the highways now. Yep. Great, no questions. That means we're doing great, right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We enforce that. There's law. There's traffic in the traffic article. There's laws.
I'd like to make a contract with the government and stand on one
Yeah,
corner
you could.
and take it and pay 10%.
We. Yes, that's part of our aggressive driving program.
26 and Georgetown Road, Georgetown Boulevard, and you make a fortune just ticketing people.
You do, right? And we do. We write people for it all the time. It's a distraction that we don't need.
Is there a figure on how many you have ticketed within the past 90 days?
Oh, I don't know, sir. I know we watch for it every day, and they write tickets every day for it. Every day. I know.
I see people turning corners that make it here and turning sharp.
It's a shame.
It's unbelievable.
It's just such a distraction. Yes. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any statistics or any information of what exactly is happening on high school regarding drugs?
Regarding,
Numbers of students that
I don't have the exact number, but we have an issue every once in a while with our marijuana in the schools. I can't remember the last time we had a student that was stopped that had anything other than marijuana, and I'm not downplaying that. Our vaping's a big problem now with schools. they're vaping in schools. And I don't know the number, but it's not significant. The schools are very good. We work closely with them. When they find somebody with a student with drugs, we come in and appropriately handle it. We don't put a drug dog, the sheriff will not put our canine drug dogs inside the schools. He doesn't believe in that. However, we do on occasion put them in the parking lots. And the reason he doesn't do that is marijuana has residual smells, effects, and if the kid had marijuana in there last year in a locker and the dog hits on it and the child's using that locker this year, I don't want to go down that road. It's just not fair to the child. We will do the parking lots. Okay. Can't remember the last time we had something other than marijuana in high school. And again, I'm not downplaying marijuana, but we do not have an issue in our schools with drugs. We do not.
Sally, that does not mean we do not have an issue with drugs with our children. It's schools may not be the place of use or storage for drugs, but that does not minimize the fact that our children are using drugs, and we got to deal with that. And it's not just our children with drugs, it is our community, but our children, in this case, is the target that you're talking about. Just because they're not found in the school that means there are no drugs that our kids are using. That is not a true statement. And we all have someone in mind that has either overdosed or has dealt with drugs with their children or the children themselves. I appreciate the question. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know one thing. If you start putting the so-called medical marijuana stores in commercial places, aren't you making it easier for unscrupulous people to include students getting marijuana? Why don't you just leave them in industrial, make it a little bit harder?
Yes, sir, and I appreciate the question. Thank you so much. And I'm going to answer that question, but I'd be remiss if I did not share with you a couple of other things. One, those that are with me today, I have Roberta Wyndham, our Chief Administrator, Linda Eisenberg, Head of Planning, Christine Kay, who runs everything in social services, or in citizen services, to include the center. Also, a shout out to a few folks that are out here, my great neighbors, Chris and Ray Combs, who convinced me to move onto Dixon Ave and are stalwarts in our community. Sally, it was an awesome event on Saturday. Did you know that there's a B&O Historical Society located here in Carroll County? And boy, do they got a bunch of stuff in that building. And they had a great event on Saturday evening, so thank you so much for the invite. Don Champ, Mayor of Eldersburg, thank you for being here. So if you don't know Don, I'm sure most of you know Don. And of course, Bob, my stalwart. Dealing with zoning and a decision that was made by our commissioners, include me, as I was, I think, a strong part of that conversation in dealing with medical marijuana. I never expected that I would be talking about medical marijuana. I never thought in government we would be talking about marijuana. Actually, I apologize. Linda, you can take this, help me out. I just want to capture the topics that we're going to talk about, like 2-3 words, and just so I can continue to highlight those, comments that we're going to talk about today and then this evening, and continue the momentum with them. Okay, so regarding medical marijuana, we decided to put medical marijuana dispensaries in commercial zoning districts, as you have heard about in the paper, with the intent that medical marijuana, being regulated and governed by laws already, will be dispensed for medical reasons, not for recreational reasons, making it available to those that need medical marijuana. And it's, again, already governed. So to add another layer of regulation, I'll tell you, that's something I do not agree with. I believe that we should have the laws that we have in place, enforce the laws that we have in place, and if necessary, to emphasize those laws or supplement them, we make those decisions. But in dealing with the zoning, the decision was that medical marijuana dispensaries is to be zoned in commercial locations, just as if a pharmacy dispensary is dispensing other medicines. Can they be misused? Absolutely. Would it be available for children to misuse? Not from that dispensary, it would not. And that's where we have to hold the dispensary and those that are running it accountable and abide by the laws. Great question, sensitive question, emotional at times. Again, I never thought I'd be talking about pot or marijuana standing up here as it's used medically, but it has been proven that it is has good usage and should be dispensed appropriately. That can also be discussed in open session, or excuse me, late March, when we come out for public comment as well. I do appreciate it. Yes, sir.
I have a question for you. You alluded to it earlier. Where Homeland is and all
Yes.
the dirt that's being moved there. I have seen, as I drive down 26 and come out of Freedom Center, the big concrete, what appear to be concrete piping that's going in there, which tells me that there's some kind of plan, at least afoot, to do something there to put in some kind of infrastructure. My question is this: A, what is that property zoned for? And I know that you said a moment ago that right now we're just moving dirt, but if they're putting in infrastructure, obviously there's some thought afoot to continue with that.
So it is zone C2.
This neighborhood retail, B&R.
Okay.
And the future land use designation is commercial medium. So it will be commercial medium C2.
Right. So I am using the new words, new letters, C1, C2. It is going to be zoned C2.
Okay.
It is moving dirt from two other county projects that need to move dirt out of those projects and make it available. So now they're moving it to there. So it's actually doing our county government a good deed by moving that dirt. It is preparing that land for commercial use. So that's why you see the changing footprint. But specifically, what is going to go in there, I do not know. And that is for the developer that is working that land right now to figure that one out. Yes, ma'am.
Isn't part of that because the developer is waiting on the zoning in order to decide what is in there?
Not necessarily. So I met with the developer a couple times, and I believe what he is interested in putting in that location, it's appropriately zoned. So there will be no changes in zoning necessary for what I believe he wants to put into that property. What that's going to be, I don't know. I mean, we've all probably heard maybe a Lidl, a small grocery store. I don't know if that's still on the table or not. That's his business, not ours. But it is zoned, going to be zoned C2, and it will be appropriate for the things that he wants to put in.
And C2 means
Medium density commercial. I apologize. You want to walk through?
It's a medium commercial designation. So typically what's allowed in there are buildings no larger than 60,000 square feet. Under our current BNR, there's a 10,000 square foot limit per use. That's going to be brought up to 60,000 square feet per use limit. And it's smaller than our current BG, because the BG that we have now, Business General, allows a much wider, and any size can go in over 10,000 square feet. So this will put a limit on what can happen as far as square footage of a site. They can also do age-restricted for assisted living, nursing, continuum care, and age-restricted 55 and older community is also allowed to be on that C2 site in the future.
so is that part of the zoning so that you can build?
No. So right now it's in a draft, and that draft has been made public. It's on the county website, and we're having 2 public outreach meetings, as Commissioner Rothstein said. March 26th will be at the county office building at 6 o'clock to 8 p.m., and then the other will be March 27th here from 6 to 8 p.m. And then after that, we'll take back any additional concerns that may arise out of this comment period, take them back to the commissioners for a further discussion prior to going to a public hearing. And if they decide that they've heard a lot of particular issues on one topic or multiple topics, they will maybe make a different decision than what's already been presented, and then they will host a public hearing. And we don't have any dates scheduled for that yet.
The Freedom area is the largest designated growth area in Carroll County. A couple of the committees that I sit on, the commissioners divvy up our time outside of just the Thursdays open sessions to support committees and commissions around the county. I serve on our Veterans Advisory Council as an ex aficionado with Commissioner Weaver, but in this case, I also serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I am the county representative ex aficionado on that commission as well, as I want to continue to learn, but also participate in making those right decisions that I believe, are necessary for our community, specifically in the Freedom area. So it's a great question. A lot of work has been done, a lot of due diligence work from Linda and her team in coming to us with definitions, making it into small words so we can understand it, having strong dialogue, going back and forth, coming up with a draft plan that I believe is timely, and we didn't just hold on to something for years, but now it's been 6 weeks, and we're ready to go forward to you with this draft plan to get your thoughts and comments, when I say you, collectively, to then move forward in putting the zoning in place and make it regulatory. Yes, Beth? I apologize. Yep. Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. I was already directed to do that once. So, exactly. Repeat the questions. Kim.
Since we're talking about commercial rezoning, what about residential? Our focus group has not met in, 7-8 months, Linda, at least? So obviously nothing happening on the community side from that. So can you give us an update on that?
So we made a deliberate decision to have the work sessions focused on commercial, industrial, and employment centers. That's where our resources came in with our folks and our time in doing that and getting that specifically in place. Now that we've moved forward from that, going to get the public comment, it's going to be the next step. We're talking residential. The other part about this Freedom Plan, I met with a handful of folks already, and I'm very impressed with the dedication, the discipline, the work that you have done in getting your voices heard about this Freedom Plan. I think it's on the second page. One of the priorities of this is to stand up a community group. And I believe that community group is going to help navigate us in making the right decisions in executing this plan. If we don't do it that way, we're going to come up with decisions and ideas thinking that it's for the best use for you, but we're probably going to be missing the mark. So getting your fingerprints, again, collectively, on helping us execute this plan through a community organization, which doesn't mean not me or not Linda. We are available as resources to you. That's why I'm up here today. But to ensure that it's your voice that's heard collectively on how to execute this. That's an important role that I want to ensure you understand, that I want to participate, but it's moving forward to the next step. The plan is done. Whether I agree, disagree, how things happen, regardless, it was accepted, approved, signed in October of 2018. It is now time to move forward with the zoning. It's now time to step up with a community group and continue the dialogue with us in moving forward. It's a great question about residential. It's just we can't do everything all the time at once. So we made deliberate decisions on moving forward with the commercial, industrial. I don't even know the other letters that there now, I just say commercial, industrial, and employment centers. And then also ensure that they're conforming with the regulations and laws that are in place at the state level. And that's also where the medical marijuana discussion came in as well. But more to follow when it comes to residential. Yes, ma'am.
quickly, and just say that I understand that, we have the two issues that we're looking at, but they are both very, very important. And as long as we are not working on the residential side, we are opening ourselves up to allowing development that falls under the current zoning codes to be developed. And that is not exactly what is the best, when we started out, we talked about what's best, the growth where it's best.
Okay, so first off, I don't always agree with you, but I agree with you that it is important that we focus the residential zoning alongside with the commercial, industrial, employment center zoning, or put them together because they are, as I would say, nested together. You can't have one without doing the other. If you do one in a stovepipe without the other, you're really going to mess up the zoning of one of the efforts. And the concern is, are we going to, by deliberately looking at the commercial, industrial, employment centers right now, are we going to, by mistake, have unfortunate effects on the residential zoning? That's the biggest concern. The answer to that is I do not believe so, because I do not believe we're going to be waiting very long before we start attacking the residential zoning issues, and where the committee that you participate on is going to become more active. It's just we had to get from one point to the other, so we're really in the nascency of this. October 2018, it is March something, 2019. Been in office 90 days, this is about 5 months old. Since this was signed 5 months ago, think about all of the activities that have taken place, regardless of the election, regardless of us being put in place, but it was putting a planning and zoning director, taking away the acting participation ribbon of it, and making her our planning director. Standing up work groups, having those work groups, I think 5 or 6 work groups that have moved in place. I've met with the community folks a few times already on standing up a committee that's a priority to this. So it's not doing something, it's trying to put it all together, but I absolutely agree with you, Kim, that it is very important that we nest our zoning, residential, with the other zoning that's happening. And you can take it from me that we will be doing that. Yes, sir.
Columbia. When I drive to Columbia, I really have a hard time finding a gas station or department stores or places like that, because they are well hidden by berms and shrubbery and trees. And does Carroll County give that any consideration at all? Instead of having people drive down the road and see a half-a-mile parking lot, and somewhere down a half-a-mile away is a series of stores, and now those stores are putting fast food restaurants right up next to the road, so that I don't know the difference between Randallstown and Eldersburg anymore.
Okay.
I don't want to be negative, but I know those things are necessary, fast food restaurants and such. But do they have to be so visible that it's just one right after the other? And the same thing with commercial and industrial facilities, that they could be a little more well hidden, so that you don't see, you don't notice them as much, instead of seeing trees and grass and shrubbery. Is that a consideration? Because you said you were in planning.
It's a great question. So again, repeating the question, I am learnable, is Columbia, just south of us, has a lot of commercial and industrial in place. But you don't openly see it because it's behind berms. The signage is limited in Columbia. Why doesn't Carroll County look at that model and start working towards not having all of these signs on 26 and look like it's just one big commercial zone and one big industrial zone? It's a great question. Columbia developed, as many of you should know, Jim Rouse, many years ago in the late 50s, came up with the idea of developing Columbia in his wagon wheel approach with the town center in the middle and these spokes that went out. And there were village centers. And those village centers, he designed to not necessarily be hidden, but to conform to the property and not level the ground and keep those berms in place and keep the trees in place. And it has grown up to be just that wagon wheel approach with village centers and the town center, where it's not just one big strip mall. Now, there are areas in Howard County that there are commercial zones. And, you know, on 175, you know, there's large department stores and all that kind of stuff. So there are some commercial zones. But inside the town itself of Columbia, you're right. It's designed that way. I do not believe the town of Sykesville was designed that way, or any of the other municipalities here in Carroll County, nor Eldersburg when it came to this, except to identify the necessity to keep us as rural as we can and growth and development where it makes sense. So we're not just putting stuff on top of each other. The challenge is what you see is 26, you know, and a lot of the commercial growth there. Is it considered, I agree with you that we should be looking at maintaining the beauty that Carroll County has and do as best we can when it comes to trees and when it comes to, you know, keeping the ruralness and rural feel of our community. It's a great question. I'm going to look more into it on how we're doing that and talk to some of our folks about that. But it is a great question. It was very deliberate with Columbia on how they did it. I do not believe that model, well, I know that model was not put in place here in Carroll County. But it's a great question. So, and should be continued to look at. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I live in the community, one of the communities where dirt is being removed and placed at the location that you referred to earlier, Oklahoma Estates. I believe it's a water mitigation project. The first thing that they did is they came in and they took out a whole hillside of 200-year-old mature trees. Can either of you elaborate on what is happening with that project? I haven't really been able to find a lot about it other than its stormwater mitigation. So I'm curious if there's any more detail about it and what is the target completion?
Okay, so I appreciate the question. You're talking about a specific project and the tree removal that has taken place and what is the current status. I don't know, Roberta, do you know?
I don't know as much as our water resource folks do. You can contact them. Tom Devilbus is the director. But we are required by federal law through the state, through what's called a National Pollutant Elimination Discharge System Permit, NPDES, to work on to mitigate so much stormwater, and that is this project is part of that. So we're doing these stormwater projects and have been for years all over the county, so it's taking I believe 2 ponds and making them one and modernizing them up to date so that they would handle the proper amount of stormwater.
It's a great question, a very specific question. I owe you an answer, a very direct answer, and I'll get that to you. There's a lot of changes that are happening. Some I know more than others. I could talk to you about the Freedom Readiness Center on 32. Yes, sir.
I understand that for every tree that's taken down from a commercial zone has to be replanted. I'd like to know, where are you planting these trees in Carroll County, specifically the Ludens area that just tore up all these trees, the so-called retirement community that's just down on Oklahoma. Where are these trees being replanted?
Okay. So again, I cannot answer directly that question. And the question again is, where are we replanting trees that are being removed while we're developing in these different areas, especially some of these commercial zoned areas? I owe you that answer, and I will get you that answer. I apologize. I'm going to get you that answer, and I'm going to talk to Tom about that. But we are required by law to ensure that we are making the best effort to replant and put trees where we're removing trees. Which I just want to share with you, another committee I stand on, I sit on, is what's called MACO, which is the Maryland Association of Counties. Every Wednesday, to include tomorrow, I go down to Annapolis, and while the legislative session is in place with our delegates in both here in District 5, along with those in District 9, which represent those south of 26 in Eldersburg, Sykesville, are in session trying to make the best decision, put the best laws in place. MACO is all counties and the city coming together to help navigate them through those discussions and laws. One of those, and the reason I'm sharing this with you, is one of those topics specifically had to do with reforestation. So,
Question.
yes, sir.
If the county wants to get our input on planning and zoning, why is it that planning and zoning always schedules their meetings when people are at work or just getting off? Why don't they do it at a time that's convenient to the people?
Again, really good question. And that is specifically the commissions and committees and activities and meetings that we have. Why aren't they more convenient to be inclusive of the community and to get the community input necessary to make those right decisions? We have open sessions in the mornings on Thursdays. We have Planning and Zoning Commission. I think I have a meeting next week in the middle of the day. We do have, I think, once a month, every first Wednesday of the month in the evening to help focus on having it both during the day. I'm talking about Planning and Zoning Commission. But the fact still remains, there are a lot of activities happening in our government that are both community-led through these commissions and committees and councils, and then the government-led through these open meetings that we have on Thursdays. How can we become more inclusive to you and get you more involved? Because again, you shouldn't worry about who I am or type of government we are or any. It should be, what are your needs? How can we improve your quality of life? How can you talk to me better and ensure that I'm listening and then can act on it? This is one of those ideas. To have a listening session this morning at 10 o'clock to have you here, and then also have one this evening at 7 o'clock. Because those available now may not be available this evening. So it's, again, it's taking the extra step. And that's my intent as one of your commissioners, is to take that extra step, make myself and ourselves more available to ensure that we can listen to you and get your ideas. I'm going to do my best I can in doing just that. But it is a great question because it's never always convenient for everybody to have these meetings. But I do think we need to continue to do a better job and identify the times that are best, and then also identify who should be on those committees. Do those committees represent you? Are there committees that are out there that don't represent you? And should they be changed or moved around? And I got you. And the answer is yes. And we're doing just that. From the planning and zoning to the Veterans Advisory Council, to all the other committees and councils on aging, disabilities, all the other committees, councils, and groups. We're looking at quarterly who should be on those, or who can be on those, who are eligible to be on those. It takes you. It also takes you to volunteer your time and ask yourself, is this something, a topic that you want to be engaged and involved in? And then submit to us, I want to be involved in this committee. And, you know, I would appreciate that, because the more insight I get from you, the better I can do my job. But it's a great question, and I apologize. It's never convenient for everybody all the time, the downright answer. But I do owe you an answer on the reforestation specifically. Yes, sir.
Commissioner, I have two suggestions. One that I think is pretty easy that you should be able to accomplish with your state partners. The other one is protracted, and you mentioned a few moments ago quality of life. I know that you've experienced this, and everybody in this room has. Route 26, Liberty Road, traffic lights. It's a rolling roadblock. The lights on 26 need to be synchronized so that traffic is able to get through at a proper, pace. I've done that to Torrington Speedway, perhaps we get together with delegate reps, our state partners. The other thing, this is protracted, and again, it's a quality of life issue, and it's Route 32. And I would just like to kind of throw out, I know the money's not there to widen 32 down to the Hopo line, but when you go out 70 and up into the mountains, they have bypass lanes, slower traffic to the right. Maybe a suggestion would be, until less money is appropriated to improve 32, and instead of that being a continual roadblock, maybe an idea is having some bypass lanes for a protracted distance if the right-of-ways are in place to allow traffic to flow a little bit more easily.
Okay, so great questions and suggestions. Focus the discussion for a minute on 26 and Highway 32. There are 3 state highways in this community, in our district. Main Street, Sykesville, 851, 26, and 32. I am meeting with State Highway Administrator, the lead engineer that focuses on Carroll County, next week, I think. Yeah, we're meeting next week. Specifically focused on those 3 issues that you're talking, well, 2 issues you talked about. I'm adding 851 because that road is deteriorating, Main Street. And if we don't fix it, we're going to be in a world of hurt down in Sykesville. So keeping the attention on Sykesville and 851 is very important, should be to all of us. Regarding 26 and Johnsville is a bear. I totaled my car there about 4 or 5 years ago, and Sam was in the car with me, and it was pretty scary. Fortunately, we were fine. The car was not. I've seen cars upside down recently, and I've seen lots of accidents on 26 and 32, 26 in Johnsville by the Methodist Church. That was the catalyst for me picking up the phone and talking to John Kincannon, who is the lead engineer for State Highway for our community, for District 7, which includes Carroll County. As they're and he agreed that he wants to meet, and he's going to come with his team about that area and about 32 and the plans to widen 32. There are plans to widen 32. There is funding in place for the plans to widen 32. There is not funds in place to execute those plans. So working with him, working with MDOT, his parent organization, Maryland Department of Transportation, working with some ideas on what's happening on 32, which may include federal dollars, because there's that National Guard Readiness Center. That's going to be a 65,000 square foot facility when all said and done, across the street from Haight. So you see a lot of dirt being moved. That's what's going on in there. And coming up with ideas on how to widen 32 and make it more appropriate for the traffic, on 32. No easy answer. As far as Johnsville and 26, the initial answer is they're widening, as you know, 26 west of Johnsville Ave. The intent is to get that done and then look at the traffic on Johnsville on that corner. Now, he's going to come to me with statistics and the latest and greatest information, and then we're going to go from there. Regarding the synchronization of the lights, we're going to have the same conversation. They control those lights, and we're going to talk through that as well, because you're not the first that have shared that with me, and you're not the only one that has experienced it, and it's frustrating, and I know that feeling as well. Most of my work, I go southbound 32, and I get frustrated on how long it can take in the bottleneck on 32. So we're also talking about that. Regarding bypass, I don't have an answer. That's not even right now on my agenda. So 32 widening, 26 on the corner of Johnsville, and 26 as far as the lights, 32 and Bennett, and then also the widening of 32. So, yes, ma'am.
While you're talking about the traffic on 26, where Homeland is and the commercial development that's going to take place as soon as the developer decides what he's going to build, can you look into that area? Because those of us who live in Homeland, it's very difficult for us to get out of our community. And with that additional commercial development, can you look at that area too?
Absolutely. So the question is, on 26 specifically around Homeland, if and when commercial development takes place just to the west of Homeland, is there going to be access roads available to take care of the traffic, or is it going to bottleneck even that much more? And that's a concern. And the question is, can I bring that up to State Highway? Absolutely, I will bring that to State Highway. I will share with you, in my past life, I was an economic developer in Anne Arundel County. As I worked with developers in building in the county, requirements for ingress and egress and safety were paramount before they started building, so there had to be a plan. When it came to county, the state does the same thing. State Highway does the same thing with their engineering. So when something comes in on a state highway, is there appropriate ingress, egress, in and out traffic, and is it safety? Is it safe? I will have that conversation with them, because that is an absolute concern, and that's anytime you see growth happening on any of those highways, is there adequate space for safety for ingress or in and out traffic? Good question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have also talked to Mr. Kincannon at the state regarding the widening project on Liberty Road. My concern is the length of time it's taken. They've been working on that now for about 2 years for 1 mile of roadway, and it's a very dangerous situation. I actually drive a school bus, and I cover that territory, so it's tough for buses as well as everyone else. So when you have your conversation next week, would you please reiterate the fact that we really are growing weary of the time that it has taken? I know they had 2 changes of scope in the work of that project, which caused some of the delay. My second concern is the intersection right down here at Liberty Road and Oakland Mill. They are widening and changing that intersection and adding some stormwater mitigation for the reservoir. Again, another project that was started and stopped, and it has taken far too long. So when you discuss these things with the state, please ask them why they're not doing better upfront engineering to uncover the issues that have to be addressed when they start work, so that when they start work, they can finish the job.
Okay, so
That's a real concern.
I appreciate. So the widening of 26 west of Johnsville Ave, that's on my agenda to talk about the timeline associated with that and where are they at, and when I can then share with you this is the end date, expected end date. Because you're right, things can keep going on and statements of work can change over time, and all of a sudden it becomes what was a 6-month project is 3 years down the road and it's half done. Okay, so I owe that to you. Oakland Mills, I appreciate it. That was not on the agenda, and I will put it on there and walk him through that concern as well on 26 and get his thoughts on that. As far as their abilities in engineering, I'm going to be as tactful as I can and partnering as I can to ensure that they understand the requirements when they're asked to do something. and a lot of it has to do with communications and ensuring that I understand, I being our county, what is happening and what are the expectations of start date and end date. And then I can share that with you. So, but it's a good point. Yes, ma'am.
Another problem, I live at Homeland.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're sitting there to go out. There's cars coming down in the outside lane thinking they'll have their blinker on, and they've gone all the way down to Walmart before they turn. And that's a problem for us because you don't pull out. There was an accident there one day, a girl did pull out and she got hit. But they had their blinker and she thought they were turning Homeland. And they will get in that lane and ride it all the way down, and that is a
Work with the
right
state
turn
police, and
lane.
we can work on that issue at Homeland, making
It's a
vehicles that are
So-
turning when they're so appropriate.
So the question specifically was, again, with Homeland and 26, and the concern, the safety concern on 26, those that are moving, turning right into Homeland, they may not be turning right into Homeland. They just may be turning their right blinker on, going all the way down to the library, down to Walmart. And the person leaving Homeland says, oh, they're making a right, and they're going to pull out, and then they get T-boned. And that is a major concern. I appreciate that. Enforcement is going to be very important. It is a state highway, so like from the sheriff's department, partnering with the state highway, making that awareness, and you start making people aware of that 2, 3, 4 times, all of a sudden that changes a little bit of the culture on that concern. I can bring that up to state highway as well as far as signage. Maybe there is something that can be done there, but I understand the fact that if you make that blinker thinking half a mile down the road you're going to make a right down to Walmart, it becomes very dangerous. So, right, regardless, right. Yep. No, I understand. And I think partnering with the state, 26, is a good idea. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. We also have a problem with the middle lane and trying to, out of Homeland, trying to do a left. It's almost impossible. So last year I did an email to the State Highway Administration and asked them if they would either put a light at Homeland, which they won't, or maybe we could do like a boulevard where they could everybody would turn right, go to the light at West Hemlock, I believe, and make a U-turn. And they said they couldn't do that. We had to work with the county on that type of thing. So, and I've seen people in the middle lane actually make a U-turn in the middle lane in between the roads. And I thought that's not right. So is there any way we could widen the road at West Hemlock so we could make a U-turn instead of having to go right, going to the mall, going into the mall, turn around and come out? We need to have something done.
Okay, so understand the question one more time. Again, with Homeland is the coming in and out of Homeland, the 26 making the turns. It's nearly impossible to make those turns. Working with State Highway, I'd like to see that letter, and I can take that and also put that on the agenda with State Highway. Again, I'm meeting them next week, and in fact, I think Director of Operations or Assistant Director I met with yesterday will also be in that meeting as well from MDOT. So it's going to be a pretty inclusive meeting to talk about a lot of these issues. Regarding Hemlock, that is county. Let's start with the one. Let's start with the enforcement and partnering with State Highway on 26 and move forward from there.
So we have been working with State Highway on Maryland 26 to look at a redesign of what they already have. Many, many years ago, State Highway got to what they call 30% design for the upgrades to Maryland 26. And then the project was halted for various reasons. We've been working with them again to identify intersections like that and make those improvements. They've already identified high crash areas where it would make sense to put that boulevard in, so you could only have right-hand turns into certain areas and right-hand turns out to avoid that left-hand turn, which is the most deadliest type of collision. So we actually have been meeting with them staff to staff on Friday to talk about what are the systematic improvements that can be made to redesign 26 and not go back to that original full boulevard, but really make the improvements that need to happen now for safety, more importantly, along the 26 corridor. Yeah.
So bottom line in this is partnership between the county and the state, the sheriffs and the state police, partnership between us and State Highway Administration, the staff-to-staff work that's also happening. That's still not enough because we still have the problem. Now we just have to keep moving forward and trying to fix that problem. It's hard. It comes down to resources, comes down to priorities. Just as I shared with you earlier, the values, priorities, and resources, the state goes through the same drill in what are their values, priorities, and resources, and how are they allocating them, and where does it make best sense. One of the first questions they bring up or want to talk about is, well, there's no accidents happening right there, or there's no accidents documented right there in many cases. We have to get past that to go to the next step, because there's another issue completely outside of our community on 97. If you go northbound 97, you're making a left into the arc. That is a one tough left turn because you're coming off the ramp onto 97, and it's frustrating because I just did it. I'll be bringing that up to them as well. But I mean, there's lots and lots of requirements. One of the things I learned a long time ago when I was running the installation, I would walk down the road, literally walk down the road, and I would find 10 deficiencies on that road. Which one deficiency did I want to fix? Because that's what I was resourced to do. It's a challenge. It's putting them into our priority list and then working the resources to fix the issues. So, but I appreciate it. And it would never be a priority if it's not from you telling us, here are the concerns that we have. So I appreciate that. Yes, ma'am.
Another subject completely. What's the status of the hotel/restaurant construction situation?
So restaurant, I'm not specifically sure of. And I believe you're referring to the hotel by Safeway and Home Depot. Yeah. Candlewood Suites, it is zoned. They went through, the proper steps in presenting it, and it got accepted. And that's kind of where they're at right now. I had a discussion with our economic development team recently, and they're moving forward. But it has been identified as a Candlewood Suites, and there was a concern about the traffic and a circle, and that's also being taken care of as well. So that's where we're at with that. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for the sheriff.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that they have specific places where you keep cops when they're speeding.
Well,
what I'm saying is, I live on Barcelona. Liberty High School, I'm sorry if anybody's kids go there, when they let out, you better get out the way. Especially when they come down Barcelona Road, because if a child or anybody steps out, they're gonna get hit.
So the question was traffic enforcement and speed enforcement, and she's concerned about Bartholomew Road, the children leaving Liberty High School. Yes, we do traffic enforcement there. We now, effective the beginning of the school year, we now have a full-time school resource deputy at that school. And that will be part of that school deputy's responsibility, is to enforce, not only just going out and enforcing our speeding issue, but also educating our children, telling them that we're going to be out there. So, and that's part of the battle, is just giving them warning and talking to these kids about it. And the school's aware of it too. Yes, you're absolutely correct. And so hopefully that's mitigated real soon, because our deputies have always been out there, but now we have somebody that's dedicated just to that school.
And now that we know also that the B&O Historical Society is located on Bartholomew Road, we're going to have thousands of people going into that area, so we got to make sure that safety is taken care of, so I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
There was some news reported about a hotel being planned in Sykesville. Is that still in the process?
Is a hotel being planned in Sykesville? And what you are referring to, I believe, is on the Warfield project. So the Warfield project, there are four specifics to the project. One is the renovation of the historic buildings and using them for offices and businesses. There are 3 of those buildings that are already renovated and are occupied. The next step is getting the other buildings renovated and then either sold or leased and occupied. The second step is the townhomes that are being built there, which are being built underneath of Elm Street Developers. And there's 145 townhomes that are being built right there. The third step is opportunity to build retail in the Warfield district from the ground up. And then the fourth is specifically a hotel and property that is allocated to a hotel. And there's a couple of parcels that they're looking at Warfield to building a hotel. Is there a plan to build a hotel there? Just what I share with you, that's the plan. Specifically, is there a targeted vendor or someone to build a? No. The developer is talking to lots of folks, to include our economic development team, to find the right hotel to build there. What they're looking at is probably about an 85 key hotel or 85 room hotel, so relatively small in comparison. The Candlewood Suites, I think, is 125, give or take. So it's going to be relatively larger. But there is a plan for a hotel. Is there a target community that could use that hotel? North of Grumman, being right next door, has 40 or 50 folks a week that come visit North of Grumman, and they stay somewhere. So that may be a strong targeted audience for a hotel like that. But yes, ma'am.
Hotels, one in Eldersburg and one in Sykesville. I mean, where is Eldersburg drawing from for that? Right.
So how do we justify 2 hotels in District 5, Sykesville, Eldersburg? 2 different plans, 2 different developers, 2 different opportunities for those developers to have appropriate zoning for hotels. The market analysis done by the hotel itself and by the economic development team and the developers was done. And there is a large enough population need requirement that determined for Candlewood Suites, which comes under the International Hotel Group, IHG, which is very, very, very large, doing their market analysis saying, yes, a hotel of this size and this, capability that Candlewood Suites would bring would be suitable for the Eldersburg area. The Warfield community or Warfield district, that analysis has been done by the developer. Now, working with a hotel group or someone who wants to build a hotel, it's that individual or team that's going to do that analysis on whether a hotel would be suitable to be built there or not. Because the last thing you want to do is build 2 hotels and then be empty, and not be used. So from a business perspective, it is both zoned appropriately for that type of, business to be built. And the market analysis has to be done. I do know that the market analysis was done regarding the Candlewood Suites and the one by Safeway, where that's going to be built. The one in Warfield, I think they're still in the very beginning of that discussion.
Where are they drawing from here in Eldersburg?
Well,
I mean, Eldersburg's not that big. And we're close to 70, but if I'm traveling, and I travel a lot, I wouldn't go this far off of 70 when I'm on a trip.
it is it's local business community, it's visitors, it's family members that are visiting the schools. You got South Carroll, Liberty, and Century. You have communities around here that have people coming in, and where do they stay? They either stay at their, family's houses, which is a nice idea, but maybe not for an extended stay, speaking personally. But I think I think there has been determined a need or a requirement that would be appropriate for a Candlewood Suites. As far as the one down in Warfield, I believe what they're looking at is more of a business community that could be tied to something like Northrop. Yeah. it's analysis being done by those groups and by those that are building. You can, but it's the person that's actually putting a shovel in the ground and putting the millions of dollars to build whatever they're doing or taking out that mortgage. So they want to make sure they got it right. And the International Hotel Group with Candlewood Suites believes they have it right in doing that. So that's a great question. Yes, sir.
Fisher, you have several times mentioned the intersection of Bennett and 32. Can you give us some idea of what might be happening there?
No. The question is 32 and Bennett. What's happening in 32 and Bennett? What I could share with you is what the plan is in place right now, but there's not a whole lot that is there. What I'd like to do is reserve that after I have the conversation with the state highway engineer specifically to address that corner, and then I can come back to you and say, here's the latest and greatest.
And what issues do you feel existed back there?
The congestion coming out from Bennett, making a left onto 32, 32, can be very congested. And is that light appropriate? You know, the timing and all that kind of from moving in and out of Bennett.
Coming from the opposite direction where you go up that steep incline.
From Johnsville?
Okay. That was created, I think.
Yeah.
America was built on.
Yeah.
And I think it's a hazard.
And I can definitely bring that up. You know, and they're going to share with me the same question about Johnsville and 26 accidents, about Homeland and accidents and what troubles have they been seeing. But I can definitely bring it up and see what studies have been done. And we'll just go from there. Yes, Katie.
In the discussions with Johnsville and Bennett before that's fixed, we have more police presence to try to prevent people from going straight in the turning lane?
Yes. I didn't hear the question.
Okay, so the question is, before we change infrastructure and dump millions of dollars into changing the roads, what about the first step in getting enforcement appropriately for that corner and tagging people that are doing inappropriate activities on that corner? So getting
The enforcement there, absolutely.
Yep.
And that the right turn lane going straight
Yep.
past there, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. Okay. That's good. You know, and that, again, that's where these listening sessions really do help. Are we targeting the right areas for development? Are we targeting the right areas for enforcement? Are we targeting the right areas to put our attention and our resources to? So I appreciate that. Yes. Oh, wait, no, hold on, Beth. Yes.
I hear a lot about the development of commercial properties in this conversation. Has there been any consideration to the already vacant commercial property? For example, off Exchange Drive. Yep. There are units there that have been vacant forever.
So the question is, when we're talking about when we're talking about development, specifically commercial development, there is a concern that there are a lot of see-through buildings already in place where there's vacancy in retail, strip malls, Shoppers, Hallmark, the Japanese place that was right next door to Panera's, Liberty Exchange. And how are we addressing those retail locations? Working to make them more marketable for folks to come in and occupy those spaces is one step, and that is on the developer and the community and the Chamber of Commerce to say, this is a great location for you. So continuing to advertise, whether it's hard advertisement from the developer or it's people like me saying, this is a really cool place on the strip mall that you may want to look at occupying. But why not fill all those spaces before we start building more and more and more and more? It comes down to the developer's rights, the owner's rights of that property to develop appropriately on how that property is zoned, to then find the right person or team or group to either build or develop or do whatever. So the answer really is a mixture of both. Is having the ability to build new, but then also work hard to occupy those retail spaces. Some are more difficult than others. I'll just share that with you. Some retail areas are just more difficult than others to occupy. And then some, you may see some vacancy, but like on Liberty Exchange, the back rows, they are being occupied. And there is a plan for Liberty Exchange with the developer there. And he shares that with us. But understand the concern. I mean, the last thing you want to see is a handful of strip malls with 2/3 of it being vacant, because that's not who we are. So I agree with you that that is a concern. And I have been talking to some developers about that concern, and they're actually moving away from retail to actually business and service type of buildings than retail shops. But understand. Yes, ma'am.
Kind
go
of
ahead.
the same format. Any news on the Wendy's? That's been vacant 3 or 4 years in front of Walmart.
Wendy's in front of, do you know? No. I'll find out.
3 or 4 years.
Has it? Okay, wow. Wow, time flies. I'll find out. It's a good question. The question was about what's going on with Wendy's. You know, it's been closed for 4 years. We'll find out.
I had just a quick tag-along question on the Bennett Road issue. And this actually probably goes to lots of other traffic concerns. I've been run off the road in that right turn lane into the Merritt property twice. Once all the way onto the sidewalk to avoid a collision. And I never reported that, like, to the sheriff's office. Is that something I should have or should be reporting?
Yes.
Because
Absolutely.
I'm thinking for your meeting with
Yeah.
the state highway, you're
Right.
going to have those kinds of statistics.
No, you're right. Report it. We need to understand this is an opportunity. This type of listening session channel is an opportunity for me to listen to you and learn from you some of these issues. But this is one time after 3 months. Okay. What we got to deal with is every day. So please report. You will never spam the sheriff's department. You'll never overcall. Just like when you're feeling ill, go to the doctor. Don't think just to tough it out. Because the more information they have, whether it's this issue with the sheriff's department, the more resources they can then justify to put against that concern. Because if I'm highlighting one area all the time, they're going to put resources there. But this concern, the more it's highlighted, the better opportunity and justification for resources to be put into that location.
And also immediately call 911. If you get a vehicle description, it's not tattling. That's what you know, we might have a deputy or state trooper right down the road that will see the same car doing the same thing, and we may not be able to help with your incident because we didn't witness it or there's no damage. Maybe we would be able to, but if this happens, please report it immediately. Get, if it's a Volkswagen blue, whatever, with 2 people in it, if you can get tagged, it would be great. Report it right away. There may be some enforcement we can do. They may be driving down the road doing the same thing, and we can be watching for that vehicle, what direction they're going, the direction of travel. That would help too.
Okay, what we're going to do now is go through the speed round. We got about 5 minutes before I get kicked out of here for lunch. Okay, and I do not want to disrupt lunch here. So 5 minutes. Yes, sir.
Mr. Commissioner, there's a whole lot of people who are real interested in a whole lot of different things that probably would fit well into your regular quarterly e-newsletter. Maybe we could collect their email addresses to add to that list.
Okay, so the softball was thrown up there to ensure that I can collect your email addresses, your contact information, to share with you my intent in putting out a newsletter, a periodic newsletter. I've done one so far. I've been here for 90 days. The intent is to continue to do that. What you can do, besides me gathering up all those numbers, is you can go to you tell her.
It's Carol Connect. It's on our website. You can click on it and sign up for not only Commissioner Rothstein's newsletter, but also any other news services that you'd like, whether it's Rec and Parks or anything else. And if I may suggest you do it that way, it's not our preference to put people in the system. We want you to select rather than us selecting you.
Yeah, so again, if you can, go to Carroll Connect, find that newsletter, sign up for it. The intent is for me to share as best I can information that's on my mind for our community, but then more importantly is to create that tool, that approach where we can talk together. Yes, sir.
Yes, I noticed on your chart there, and we went down through it, that roads were well down on the list, yet all the top items you mentioned road in conjunction with those. I think it would probably be appropriate to move roads up and tie it in with each one of those so that it comes forward in your mind. Also, when you said you were going to meet with the state, I would like to know what their plans are for the bridge on 26 as you're heading east towards Baltimore County, because that is always full of potholes. They're always patching.
Okay, so 2 questions. The second one first, and that had to do with 26 on the bridge going eastbound, well, on the east part of town, is there's a lot of potholes. So make sure that we make that visible to State Highway, and we will do that. Good point. The second one had to do with my butcher paper, and roads is on the bottom of that list on what I shared with you earlier on. That is not a priority list from top to bottom, that this is the most important, this is the least important. This was me last night putting together a few thoughts and ideas that I want to share with you, and that's all it was. But there, you can better believe that discussions with State Highway or with state, a lot of it has to do with infrastructure, specifically down here, 2632 and 851. So, no, it's a great point. Please do not take that list as a priority from top to bottom. That is a snapshot of last evening, putting ideas down on paper that I've listened to you from over the last 90 days on what matters. That's what those topics were. Okay, anything else? I really appreciate your time. I am doing this evening at 7 o'clock. There's absolutely no need to be here because you're going to be hearing the same thing you heard this morning. I really appreciate the questions. I appreciate the guidelines, the mentorship, and development in moving forward. So thank you very much.